and a forum member. And we are also honored to have Emmanuel Saint-Martin with us today, who is the founder of French Morning and doesn't need any introduction, but I will still introduce him. So I'm going to introduce Emmanuel because Emmanuel will introduce Chine and moderate the discussion. So Emmanuel started his career as a journalist in Paris, becoming a reporter for the weekly magazine Le Point. There he covered a range of topics before he was assigned to the international desk. He covered several conflicts from Afghanistan to Iraq for 5 years. He moved to New York City in 2004 to follow his wife, who worked at the United Nations. In 2006, he started to work as a New York and UN correspondent for France 24, a news channel. And a few months later, he founded French Morning, who was then a side project, but since then has become the first web magazine for the French American community, with 6 editions in the US. So again, no introduction for French Morning. And he also, something I didn't know, he has published several books in French, including L'Arrogance Française and Et surtout n'en parler à personne, L'Affaire Madoff. So maybe, Emmanuel, you could come back as the speaker to talk to us about those books. So again, thank you, Emmanuel and Chine, for being with us today. And I'm going to leave you guys with the talk today on fake news and coronavirus.
Thank you so much. I mean, thank you very much. And thank you, Chine. That's a very appropriate time to talk about the topic, obviously, because if you are on social media or switch on any TV or radio right now, you have noticed that there is another pandemic, and it's a fake news pandemic. So of course, Chine is the right person to talk about it because of her current job. I'll say a few words about that in a second. Before that, just a few words about what she did before. She's a journalist, obviously. She worked for Reuters in Paris and also worked as a multimedia producer for The Economist and freelance for the French National Radio. And for a few months or a bit over that, she's going to tell us more. She has been working as a senior editor for France at NewsGuard. And NewsGuard, of course, is a very interesting venture. It's a new company. It's a startup founded by American journalists. Just for that, for the purpose of trying to fight fake news and help give tools to people to navigate the news and try to understand what's newsworthy and what's not. So Chine, just maybe a few words about what NewsGuard is, so everybody understands what you do, and then we go into the topic after that.
Sure. Thanks so much, Emmeline, for having us, and thanks for the introduction. So NewsGuard, as you were just saying, Emmanuel, is a startup. We were founded in 2018 in the follow-up of the presidential election and a lot of the disinformation that we saw in the US. So the idea of our founders was, what can we do to try and help combat misinformation and disinformation on top of what fact-checking is doing, meaning with fact-checkers, you will get a fact-check, a debunk on a specific allegation and false claim. And the idea was, how can we help fact-checking? Because we know that, unfortunately, the viral fake news articles are shared widely, and then the great debunks are not. So the idea was to help readers by rating the credibility of the news sites themselves. And so NewsGuard is giving credibility ratings and detailed analysis of the credibility and the transparency of news and information sites in 5 countries where we operate. So the US, the UK, France, Italy, and Germany. And as you were mentioning, I lead our operations in France. And basically what you get is, it's a browser extension. So very concretely, you'll get a little icon that will be red if a site is globally globally unreliable, and green if it's globally reliable. And then if you click on it, you'll get a full analysis. So it'll appear next to your links in your when you're doing a research on your browser or in your social media feed. So you'll get an alert basically if a site is publishing a lot of false information, and you'll get a sense that it's a reliable source if it is a credible source. And so we have published to this day a little over 4,000 analyses of websites, and the way we choose our websites is we look at engagement in each market. So we cover 95% of online engagement in each country, because we know, so engagement is likes, shares, comments, and we know that that's the important piece of data, because disinformation spreads quickly and becomes viral because it gets shared on social media, it gets commented, it gets liked. And so we looked at those sites, which content is the most engaging online, and we rate these.
And what's interesting is that before that crisis, that current coronavirus crisis, you already decided to focus on health issues. Why is that?
Yeah, indeed. At the end of 2019, we decided to focus on health, both hoax sites, but also good, reliable source sites, because what we noticed is that disinformation happens on every single topic that there is, and there is a lot of conspiracy theories and disinformation to be debunked, and that's really important on political topics. But we realized that health issues are very important too, and they're a big public health hazard and threat. And before we started focusing on coronavirus, we already noticed that 1 in 10 sites that people were interacting with online were publishing health hoaxes. So it's huge. And we're talking not just vitamin C can help cure whatever. We're talking about vaccines cause autism, fruit pits can cure cancer, 5G causes cancer, all sorts of conspiracy theories and unsubstantiated allegations that are really dangerous and can be deadly. I mean, if you're talking about vaccines and fake allegations about vaccines, we've seen the potential public health impact that it can have very recently in Brooklyn with surge of diseases that we hadn't seen in a while, because there are so many people that go away from vaccination because they believe those unsubstantiated theories. So we had decided to focus a lot on these sites. And then, as you know, a few weeks ago, we noticed a lot of disinformation and false allegations specifically on the virus. So we've focused even more just on this specific topic, on the current infodemic, as the WHO has coined it.
And what's very interesting with that current infodemic is that it's actually at the cross of, you have basically fake news coming from both angles, the health issues, as you said already, and we're going to talk more about treatment a bit later, maybe, all that, because obviously not all controversy is fake news, so we have to make a distinction, and I think we'll talk about that a bit later. But there is also all the conspiracy theories and more of the political angle to that, and we've seen that all over the world. We've seen that in the US, even at the top of the country, with evolving positions regarding, obviously, the Chinese virus and all of that stuff. Yeah. So just what I find interesting in your work is that you're trying to be global. Obviously, you work usually from the US on France, but tell us a little bit how this kind of fake news spreads and
sure.
How it can spread. Taking the coronavirus as an example.
Yeah, so just to give you a little bit of background on how we started working specifically on the coronavirus, a few weeks ago, we started seeing a surge of misinformation on the topic on a lot of the websites that we either had already identified and analyzed, or new websites that we were seeing and whose content was becoming viral. So a few weeks ago, we created what we call the Coronavirus Misinformation Tracking Center, where we list all sites that have published misinformation by country. And just to give you a sense, that list is growing exponentially. To this day, I looked just before this, we have 147 sites on that list. But a little less than a week ago, we had 130. So we have almost 15 new ones in a week, considering the fact that each analysis that we put out, we spend several days on it, because we don't just see a false allegation and then put the site on the list. We have to analyze it, and I didn't go into too much details about what our criteria are, but we have 9 criteria. We write super long analyses, we reach out to the websites, we interview them, so it's a long process. So the fact that we've published 10 in just a week shows, and I have about 10 more that I'm about to start analyzing with my team for France. So it's really, really growing exponentially. And what we've seen, as you were just saying, which is really interesting, is that there's 2 main strains of misinformation that's being published on the topic. So there's the political conspiracy theories, as you were just mentioning, and those you find on all types of websites. Some sites that have published health hoaxes in the past, but a lot of just websites that publish a lot of conspiracy theories on anything and everything. From the use of chemical, from denying the use of chemical attacks in Syria to 9/11 and to the Holocaust. So on these sites, you find a lot of the new conspiracy theories, political conspiracy theories, and generally they're about the origins of the virus. And what's really interesting is that each site will give its own little nuance to the conspiracies. So globally, the main theory is that the virus was created in a lab, which we know to be false. All authorities have said that the virus has most likely emerged from wildlife. We know that from the genomic identity of the virus, and we just know that it looks like it's very similar to the type of coronavirus that you find in pangolins and in bats. But that idea that the virus was created in a lab has gone viral, and each site would come with a little nuance. So you had the Iranian version, which said that it was engineered by the US to attack its enemies, sorry. So specifically Iran and China. That was at the time where the numbers there of people affected by the virus were much more important than in the US. And there was almost no cases in the US. Of course, this has changed since. You have the idea that it was created in a lab in Wuhan, where the virus originated. And you have one that has really been global, is the idea that it was stolen by a Chinese spy in a lab in Winnipeg, Canada, and smuggled back into China. And you were asking me about the international aspect of these theories. What's interesting with this specific one, we traced that one to try and understand how it became so global, because we found it in many websites in France, many websites in the US, and it actually originated on a small, tiny website that has literally no engagement in India, called Great Game India. It's a tiny website calling itself a geopolitical journal that publishes a lot of conspiracy theories, and it has 0 engagement. But then it was republished a day later, or a few days later, I can't exactly remember, on Zero Hedge, which you might know, which is a financial political blog in the US, publishing a lot of false information. That's in the top 900 websites in the US in terms of engagement. And then the same day, republished on Red State Watcher, which is in the top 150 websites in the US in terms of engagement. And so what we see, and then of course from there, it was just all over in a lot of French sites. And the reason for that is that these conspiracy theory websites, they don't operate in a vacuum. They often republish from other websites. Sometimes they just republish entirely. Sometimes they will publish extracts. Sometimes they will translate. Some French sites specialize in translating from false information websites in the US. And so that's how these go viral and go international. And then just to finish answering your question, the second stream of false information we've seen is about, as you were saying, the bogus claims for cures and preventions and treatments. And to this day, we know that there's no known cure for coronavirus. If you are tested positive and you go to a hospital, you'll be treated for your symptoms, not for the disease itself, because we still don't know how to treat it exactly. And so a lot of drugs are being tested and clinical trials all over the world are being run, but there's a lot of websites that sort of surf on this uncertainty at the moment and publish false claims, some of which can be really, really dangerous, such as in the US, we've seen the claim that MMS, which is sort of drinking MMS can help cure the virus. The FDA has said that this is the equivalent of drinking bleach. Colloidal silver, which can also be dangerous, has been promoted as helping curing. And then you see some US sites selling colloidal silver and saying that it can help treat the disease. So those two angles are really the main ones that we've seen. And as you were saying, it's really interesting to see how they become international really quickly. And sometimes it's even hard to pinpoint where it all started. And sometimes it's in a tiny, obscure website in another country.
Great. I just wanted to add, I should have started with that. Obviously, we're going to devote a large part of this webinar to Q&A. So if you want to ask questions, the way it works, because we don't see you, it's there is a Q&A window, a Q&A button at the bottom of the window, and you can just ask your questions there, and I will read the questions as they come. We do want to ask as many questions as possible. So start now if you want to post your questions, and then as they come, I will ask Chine about what you want to know. One of the questions, obviously, and especially on the second aspect, which is the health issues, the medication, the treatments, etc. That is always one of the fascinating things about fake news and all these discussions is, you know, the border questions. When do we enter the realm of fake news or propaganda or whatever, and when are we in debate, and especially this question of you know, this huge debate about Nivaquine and chloroquine and
hydroxychloroquine, yeah.
Hydroxychloroquine, sorry, and Professor Raoult in France, also Donald Trump himself here in one press conference at the White House talking about that, is that there is this normal process in medicine where actually doctors argue, and sometimes pretty violently, and you know, they have arguments, and that's part of the process, and they treat each other sometimes, you know, and they call names and all of that. That's part of the process usually. Mm-hmm. But at one point there is a consensus, and then it comes into the public debate and then the public place. The problem here is that those debates are happening live in front of everyone, and on everyone Facebook stream or social media stream. And how do you position yourselves in that? Because the idea is not to stop doctors arguing and talking.
Of course not. Of course not. Yeah, it's a great question. It's our job is very complicated at the moment for all journalists. It's really tough. Usually, when you're a health reporter, for instance, you base your reports on peer-reviewed studies. So studies that have been scientific studies that have been published in journals that you know that are reliable, and that have been following a very specific protocol of how you should be doing research in science, and have been reviewed by peers and evaluated. So you know that you can base your reporting on that, and it's very clear, very straightforward. Right now, as you were saying, the debate is happening as we speak, and we can't really, doctors, authorities can't really afford to wait for studies to be peer-reviewed before they start trying drugs, because people are dying, so you need to try, right? And so that's what's happening with hydroxychloroquine, that we've been talking a lot about in France for a few weeks already, and that's starting to be part of the debate a lot in the US now, especially following Donald Trump's sort of very enthusiastic declaration about it in a press conference. It's interesting because there was a study about hydroxychloroquine in China that was done in vitro, so not on humans. That basing his speech on that, then there was this professor in the south of France, in Marseille, who said, I really believe that it can work. And then he tried it on a very small number of patients, and he said the results are great. Problem is that his study does not abide by all the standards that you have to abide by in normal times. But they're still encouraging. So you still have a lot of you have a lot of doctors who are saying he's right. I'm pretty sure this can work. Then you have authorities saying, okay, we have to try, so we'll run some real clinical trials. And then you have other authorities who are saying, well, wait, this can be really dangerous. We know that this drug can have some dangerous side effects, especially for people who have cardiac problems. We know that already because this is a very famous anti-malaria drug. So we've been using it for years, and we're at the moment just trying to repurpose it, as we say. So just using a drug that had been used for another disease right now to fight this pandemic. What's really difficult is that we have to, it's very understandable from a public health point of view that we have to try these things. And from a journalistic point of view, you also have to relay that information to let people know that these drugs are being tested, and that, but you have to be very clear and bring the caveats that it is not proven yet. And that's where I think the responsibility of journalism is even higher right now than usually, because you need to be very clear about all the caveats, about all the nuances, and about all the limits of the studies that you were talking about, and about everything that's being published. So a lot of journalists right now, the problem also is that every single journalist is covering health at the moment. We're not all health journalists. And we see studies being published on websites that publish peer reviewed preprints, basically, because that's important for scientists to be able to pre-publish them and exchange them. But that's not websites that we used to go to, right, in normal times. Now we have to deal with these. So it's very difficult. How do we do it? We try to, on the chloroquine, we won't put a site on our list if it has published information about chloroquine being promising, for example, because it is, to a lot of doctors, it is promising and tests are being run. We will consider that it's very misleading and dangerous if the site is saying, just stop everything. If you start coughing, then take hydroxychloroquine. And because if people do it at home and they have, for example, a cardiac condition, it can be dangerous. So it's really a matter of paying attention to the details and seeing how people and websites are presenting the information. But it is a really tricky time, and things are changing, not by the day, but by the minute, really. The health sanitary situation is evolving every single minute as we speak. A week from now, we might know and have a proven fact that hydroxychloroquine works, or we might realize that it's not a good treatment. And for now, we just don't know. So we have to be super careful. And that's how we approach those sites. We try to look for sites that don't claim things without any caveat.
That's one, obviously it has to do with what you are, but your work and the NewsGuard is a way to look at websites, not individual articles, and to have kind of an idea of if this website is generally trustworthy or not. Mm-hmm. But what this current crisis shows is that a lot of the issues are in the gray area, in the general news, regular websites that are actually publishing articles that are not that well researched, that are written by people who don't know how to do health journalism, because that's not what they do usually, what you said, these kind of things. And how do you position yourselves in that debate where actually the issue, and again, using fake news is somewhat misleading, because fake news, there is an intention in it.
We never use that term. We talk about misinformation, disinformation. We never use the term fake news.
But how do you position yourselves as a company and in your daily work with all this gray area where everybody could be
I mean,
guilty right now.
there is some gray area, but we never said, and if you read our analysis, they're very nuanced. We never claim to be giving, when you get a green rating, it doesn't mean that all the content that you'll find on that site is 100% reliable. It just tells you that behind that website, that the person who's feeding you the news there is trying to do its job by upholding some journalistic standards that are really basic, like correcting errors when they find errors in a transparent and in transparent way for the reader, not publishing regularly false information, gathering information responsibly and presenting it responsibly, which includes, as I was just saying, telling you if there is a big caveat, telling you if there is a country that is doing the exact opposite of what your country is doing at the moment, because we just don't know. And so if you go on using our browser extension and you see a green icon, yes, you can't be sure that this article will be perfect. Some articles are less well researched than others, but at least you'll know that that website is not trying to either fool you or not get the facts right and not correct their errors, because they don't really uphold these standards. And that's really what we want to be able to tell people, is just giving them a pause when they see an article from a site that we know don't uphold any of those journalistic standards, don't correct the errors, don't try and confirm information. Pause before they share it. Pause before they send it to their cousin, their grandma, and their whoever on social media. And then it's important to have the green icon that can tell you these days that, yes, the French Health Ministry website is a pretty good source. Yes, the Institut Pasteur in France is a pretty good source at the moment. Yes, the CDC is a pretty good source. But then if you go to InfoWars, you'll get this red rating that will let you know that you should pay attention, because it has been publishing a lot of false information. And we do review our ratings every 3 months. So if a site improves its practice, we'll change our rating and we'll let the reader know. And that happens. I mean, some sites improve their practice, and that just makes us happy what we're doing, because that's the goal, right? To push websites to improve their practice and just respect those criteria that, once again, are really just basic journalistic standard practice. It's not about being the best health writer at the moment. It's just about providing information that has been verified with all the nuances that you need at the moment, and without any grandiose claim that could put you at risk, at a health risk.
Great. I want to read one question. And again, if you want to ask questions, you go to the button at the bottom of your screen, Q&A, and then you type the question. Cathy is asking, have we seen any changes to the way social media companies like Facebook and Twitter are responding to fake news on their platforms compared to their methods before COVID-19?
That's a good question. I don't think there's been any, I can't be 100% sure, but I don't think there's been any substantial change. There's been a change in speed, that's for sure. They're putting a lot of efforts, and they're working much more timely in terms of removing content that's proven false. A lot of media are cooperating with Facebook and flagging when they see some articles. A lot of fact checkers, when they're seeing articles that are completely false, they're flagging them, and then Facebook will take them down. Or so they're acting much faster, and they're working. I think they've teamed up with they have much more people working on this at the moment. I don't know of any substantial change, though. That's a good question. It's sometimes hard to know exactly what they're doing, these companies.
Just about NewsGuard, you're focusing on websites, but we know that most of fake news or this kind of news or no news are spreading through social media. So what's the reasoning behind focusing on websites rather than trying to do something on social media. And can you explain how that works?
Yeah, so you're right. There's a lot of misinformation that gets spread through memes, screenshots that are shared, fake photos that are shared on Facebook, messages through WhatsApp. I mean, honestly, this is a work for fact checkers, because you need to fact check that every single meme, every single image. And a lot of fact checkers are doing that and are doing a great job at it at the moment. The AFP, I think, has debunked 90 false claims on the coronavirus to this day. And they've put them all on a web page. And you see that a lot of them are fake screenshots claiming something, or a fake screenshot of a TV that's where something has been said, but it's a fake, the channel doesn't exist, and so on. We focus on websites, and it's not for that reason. It can't be 100% comprehensive. What we do see, though, and the reason why we do what we do, is that a lot of those fake information that start by being spread on social media, they'll end up on a website at some point. It's just a matter of time. So I haven't seen, for example, the snorting cocaine can help you cure COVID-19. Haven't seen that on a site yet. Probably because the French ministry was very quick in saying that's a hoax, that's a fake, don't do that. But I'm pretty sure if they hadn't, maybe it would have ended up somewhere. And as I was saying earlier, those websites, they republish themselves all the time. So once you have it on one website, then you'll have it on many other websites. And what makes us think that our approach is important and complementary to what fact checkers are doing is that out of the 147 sites that I was telling you that we have on our coronavirus misinformation tracker, 80% of these sites we had already identified as being unreliable. And so what we see is that when a website is really red to our standards, is publishing a lot of false information, a lot of hoaxes, a lot of conspiracy theories, be it health or anything else really, if there is a new crisis, if there is a new big event of international stature, they will publish something false on it. It's almost certain, and they have. And so what we see is that once you get that alert that a site is not reliable, and maybe in our analysis you have examples on 9/11, well, it gives you a pretty good idea that for the current crisis, you pretty much shouldn't believe what they tell you on coronavirus. And I'm pretty sure that if there is another crisis 2 months from now, 6 months from now, political or health related, the same sites will be the repeated offenders that will be publishing false information and hoaxes and conspiracy theories. So that's really why we think that this sort of confirmed our gut feeling that this was a good approach. And I think it confirms that it's important to have an idea of what you find on a website and what to expect from a certain source of information online.
An interesting question from Jack. We need a lot of people to make sacrifice for others. The young need to make sacrifice for the older people. In that, can some fake news be actually useful to scare people into staying at home? Have you seen that? Can we delete quote harmful fake news rather than useful ones?
That's a very interesting question, and that's actually, believe it or not, something we've discussed recently in one of our daily meetings. We have at NewsGuard, we have daily meetings where it's sort of like in a newsroom. We debate about some sites that some of us disagree on our analysis, or we hesitate on how to rate them. And so we have some very lively debates. And recently, one of us said, okay, what if there is no consensus at the moment on the amount of time that you need to stay away from people once you've contracted the virus to not be contaminating anymore, and there's no strict consensus. So what if a site says you should be staying home 50 days, which is probably wrong, but we don't really know, and another says you should stay at home just 2 hours. Well, we at NewsGuard at the moment think that, yeah, it's our role to first and foremost warn people about the latter one, the one that says that is putting people more at risk. It's still not great to be publishing false information, but I agree with that question that in theory, it's the most important, the ones that we want to debunk first, and the most rapidly are the ones that are putting people at risk. So like drinking bleach, it's not going to help you and it can kill you. Drinking colloidal silver can be really dangerous. It can permanently damage your skin. Those hoaxes, they're more dangerous than ones that, you know, scare people into staying more in their homes. I still do believe that hoaxes that spread fear are not good either in a democracy, and so it's our role to debunk them as well. But yeah, maybe there's a timing and a sense of priority between the two types of hoaxes.
Interesting. Cathy is asking, how do you think the impact of fake video technology will add to the fake news challenges?
That's a very good question. We haven't seen, at least we at NewsGuard haven't seen many, haven't seen any really during the coronavirus crisis. We've seen recently some deep fakes being already used. I was reading, I think it was in a Vice article about a politician in India that resorted to the technique to be able to address people in different provinces in India in the language that they speak. And he obviously didn't speak all the languages, so he was able to change the video so that it looked like he was speaking the language. So it's already been used. We know that. This is just one example that one media has reported on. Of course, it's a very, very dangerous and scary thing, because those are we see already all the dangers posed by very badly done memes or screenshots that are spread, and people believe them, even though if you look for 3 seconds, they look terribly fake, or you can see that it's photoshopped, and even those are posing a really big problem at the moment. So yeah, I am worried by these. It's a good question.
Okay, we don't have another question now, so I have another question. Of course, coming back to COVID-19, have you seen the impact of the political discourse in this country or in Europe, and you know, press conferences every day from leaders and all of that? How does it work? How does it influence in any way what you see in terms of the misinformation being spread and on the different websites you're watching? Is there a strong connection in a way or another in those?
That's a very good question. I don't have a scientific answer, but what I think from what I see is that what feeds conspiracy theories is uncertainty. We see it with the hydroxychloroquine debate, right? We don't know, and so it feeds a lot of conspiracies. And all conspiracy theories at some point are based on something that's true, but then it's the way they present it, and they distort it, and so that's the danger. I think when you have authorities that are being very transparent about what's happening, about what they're trying, giving at the moment, I think the more information, the better. And I think authorities that are giving most information at the most regular pace, in those countries, you see there's a potential for less misinformation to be spread. It doesn't mean that there won't be any, because we see them in all countries and all authorities are acting differently. But I think the more authorities have waited to be transparent, or to hold regular press conferences, or to be very clear about what they were trying, what they knew, what they didn't know, the worst effect it had on those hoaxes building up. And so I think the more you're transparent in a crisis like that, the more you help those hoaxes being killed before they go viral.
without unmute, it's better. Mickey is asking, it's going to be one of our last questions because we were supposed to do 40 minutes, so we're almost there. Did you find any COVID-19 fake news posts coming from Russia?
So we're, as you know, we're looking at websites, as Emmanuel was saying, not at posts on social media. So we wouldn't be looking at posts that are posted by bots, which is what maybe that person is referring to, Russian bots, like we saw in the disinformation campaign in the 2016 election. So that I don't know, that's not what we study. But we have seen some Russian-owned media spreading false information. Sputnik, for example, in France and in other countries has spread some false information about the virus.
Kind of a follow-up, but it's interesting. Mickey is asking, and what can we do to report then when we, users, spot any false information? Because
yes.
Go ahead, sorry.
So to help us, you can, if you find a website that you think is shady and we have not rated it, you would know that by installing our browser extension. And I invite you all, maybe we can send a link after that to download it. It's free. It's usually it's usually behind a paywall, but because of the crisis, we've made it free. So until July 1st, the browser extension is free, and you can just easily download it on Chrome, Firefox, Safari, or Edge. So if you have the browser extension, you'll have a little icon that's either red or green, as I was saying, and if the site has not been rated, you'll see it won't show anything. It'll tell you it has not been rated, and it'll tell you if you want to submit that website for review to NewsGuard, click here. And so you can send us suggestions, and we do look at them, and we do analyze a lot of sites that are submitted to us by users. And so that's one thing to do to help us. Then I think there are some systems in place to alert Facebook, Twitter, all big platforms. If you see a content that is being shared in a viral way and that's false, you can also signal it to them, and they also, I think, look at that pretty closely at the moment. And then fact checkers, individual fact checking groups are also taking tips, and so I would also suggest, for example, in France, Check News by Libération, their whole team is dedicated to answering user questions. So it's not that they will find a false allegation online and then debunk it, is that they will get questions asked by readers who have seen stuff online that they think is shady, but they're not sure, and they'll explain, they'll respond to whether or not that is false or correct, and they'll explain what they found. So if you find something, you can definitely, I would invite you to email Check News or other fact-checking groups. That's just one that I know, but I'm sure there are others. And if you find a site, I'd invite you to submit it to us so that we can review it for sure.
Emma is asking, I don't know if it's in your, but she's asking on Twitter, is there a mechanism to flag false information? I've never seen that as an option, she says.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I would expect that there would be, but I'm not, I don't really know. Sorry.
No. We talked about how, you know, this is a global phenomenon and how fast it goes around the world, those misinformation. But from your work, have you noticed any difference between France and the US in terms either of the kind of misinformation that's spreading, or the kind of websites that do that kind of dirty work, or how do both countries compare in that way?
So in France, it's really the majority, but that applies to all Europe actually. The majority of hoaxes that we see on the virus are about our political conspiracy theories about the origins of the virus. So the virus having been engineered in a lab, having been having HIV insertions, which proves that it was created by men. These are the main theories that we're seeing. Whereas and so you find them on a lot of sites that have previously published conspiracy theories on Notre Dame having been not having been accidentally destroyed, but having been criminally destroyed, or the Holocaust, or 9/11, or really anything that you can think of that would create a lot of generate a lot of conspiracies. In the US, we see a little bit of everything, but we see more than in Europe, a lot of websites peddling the bogus cures. And I think one reason, and selling a lot of products to help you cure or prevent coronavirus. I think one reason for that is that the legislation in Europe is much more stringent, much more strict as to what you're allowed to sell. When it's, for example, food supplements, it has to be based on scientific evidence, and you can't just sell anything and say anything about it. So Alex Jones, for example, is now selling a lot of food packages and urging you to buy them before it's too late, before you can't leave your house and you have to pack for 4 weeks or 6 weeks so that you can face the confinement. We're seeing a lot of websites do that, selling air fresheners to help you combat coronavirus, coconut oil, and telling you that coconut oil can prevent the virus, stuff like that. Not as much in Europe. So that's one of the differences that we've seen.
Great. So very good stuff. Thank you very much. I think we went a little bit over time. Thank you. So that's usually the time where we go and network and drink
have
wine.
A glass of wine.
I don't know. Separately, Val, you want to conclude?
Yes. Thank you so much, Chine and Emmanuel, for all these insightful comments, and thank you to everyone online who joined the webinar today. This is just a final note to announce our next webinar on April 9th at 7 p.m. with FAF Young leader and author Karen Tanabe, who will be hosting a reading of her new book, 100 Suns. The RSVP form will be posted on our website soon, and we hope to see you all then. So thank you again to everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
And if anyone has questions, I'm reachable. And maybe, Val, we can just send the link so that people can download for free our browser extension if they want to.
Great. That's a great idea.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.